So what sellers have been doing right now, it's really interesting. We've been seeing sellers offering incentives on the financing. So they're offering strategies such as vendor takebacks, assumable mortgages, or buying down rates. So these are all incentives that amount to tens of thousands of dollars. So we're going to talk about how you can take advantage of this stuff as a buyer or investor in this market. So the 2023 real estate market has been crazy in Ontario, and we've seen buyers and sellers getting creative to make deals happen. Now for sellers, they're not able to get the prices they want, and the number one thing that's getting in the way of buyers is financing. Mortgages are expensive, the rates are very high, even for private mortgages, interest rates are extremely high. So whether you're an investor or just a residential retail buyer, it's really hard to buy a property and to carry it. So what sellers have been doing right now, it's really interesting. We've been seeing sellers offering incentives on the financing. So they're offering strategies such as vendor takebacks, assumable mortgages, or buying down rates. So these are all incentives that amount to tens of thousands of dollars. So we're going to talk about how you can take advantage of this stuff as a buyer or investor in this market. So before we get into this stuff, we should understand what this actually means, right? Like, what are these incentives that sellers are offering for financing? So everything has to do with the mortgage, obviously. So right now, if you go to a traditional bank, you're getting somewhere in the 6%, maybe high fives, right? In terms of the interest rate you're gonna get on a 5-year term. And if you get a lower term, it's gonna go up more. And some people are paying as high as 7% interest rates, right? And that's a drastic difference from what people were paying before. And the prices haven't changed enough to make up for that difference. Although people are getting some really good deals, the rates are still really high, and it's harder to qualify from a traditional bank. So now, being a seller, you're looking in this market to get as much money as possible, knowing that the market has slowed down. You're definitely not gonna get what you would have gotten at the peak, but how do you do that? You have to entice the buyer. So strategies that target financing of properties specifically are really gonna help out in these cases, right? So in the case of like vendor take-back mortgages, they could pretty much replace the buyer even having to go to any bank. So maybe the buyer doesn't qualify, they have some income situation, they have to go to a B lender to get a mortgage, they have to get a private mortgage. So with a vendor take-back, the buyer gets a mortgage directly from the seller. So let's say the seller has a paid off property. Usually a buyer would go to the bank, they'd put down 20%, the bank finances the remaining 80, but they're giving them 7% interest rate. Now, if you're a seller, you're like, well, maybe I don't need all of the money out right now, but I still want a really solid price when everything is said and done on this property that I'm selling. So I'll give you that 80%, I'll be the bank, but instead of 6%, I'll charge you 4%. Now, that amounts to like thousands, right? So that's like $1,000+ a month alone. So if they give you that term for 3 years, every year you're like saving $12,000 to $15,000. That's huge. And you don't have to go to the bank, you don't have to qualify for anything, you don't have to go to a private lender and pay them crazy fees. So you really save money there. Now, similarly with an assumable mortgage, this requires you to actually qualify for a mortgage, because usually the seller will have a mortgage with a major institution. So let's say I'm a seller and I have a mortgage with XYZ bank, right? And it's locked in at a really good rate because I got it at a time where rates were low. So I got it in like 2021, 2022 for a 5-year term. It's 2023, I still got a couple years left on this mortgage, and now I want to sell my property because I'm moving into a bigger property or I'm moving out of the country, whatever it is. So I can offer the buyer to take over that mortgage with the same terms, same rates, and if the difference is between 6% to 2%, now you're saving as a buyer like $2,000 a month. Right? That's a crazy discount. So what I'm gonna do now as a seller is I can charge you more to pay in price up front, but on the back end, I'm giving you a discount on the carrying cost because your mortgage is a lot lower and you can lock that in for whatever amount of time I have left on the mortgage, right? So these two strategies, they've really like reduced your costs in terms of the carrying costs like that you're holding throughout the term. And then there's rate buy downs, which are almost like, it's like the seller is giving you cash. So essentially the difference between the rate that you're gonna pay today if you go to a bank versus what you would want to pay, that difference, right? So let's say like if the bank's giving you 6%, but ideally you want like a 4% mortgage, 3% mortgage, the seller can say, hey, whatever that difference is for the next 2 years that you would have paid if you had gone to mortgage at a 4% rate, which let's say would amount to like $2,000 a month or something, right? Or like $1,500 a month. We're gonna pay you a lump sum of that cost amounting to a year's worth of expenses. So like, I'll give you $1,500 times 12 months or times 24 months for 2 years. And when this sale closes, as long as you buy my property, I'm gonna give you that back. They're essentially doing that directly either to the seller, or they're paying in instances, from what I'm hearing from lenders or from brokers, some banks will allow the seller to buy down the buyer's rate. So if the buyer is getting a rate from the bank, the seller and the bank will have this agreement where when the property closes, the sale actually occurs, is finalized. This amount that's being bought down to make up for that interest, so the bank is giving the buyer like 6%, the seller is paying directly to the bank a lump sum amount to reduce that buyer's rate down to 4%. So again, like there's so many variations to this, right? But we need to understand this stuff to understand why it's valuable. So this is kind of what's happening. Now, the thing is, in some cases, sellers are offering this, but the important part is you can actually ask for this too as a buyer, because a lot of sellers and their agents are not aware of this. This whole creative financing thing, it's not normal here as it is in the US, right? In Canada, we don't really see it happen much, especially when we had lower rates because it was unnecessary, right? It still happens on commercial deals, but now we're seeing it more on residential deals. You could go to a seller where they have an older property that they've owned for like since it was built, right? There's no mortgage on it. And you can tell them, hey, we can explore this option, right? Put this much up and maybe you can be the bank, or, you know, maybe you can give me some cash back, whatever it is. There are other nuances attached to this stuff. So, you know, take everything with a grain of salt. With every deal, you do have to make sure you're consulting like your lawyer, the mortgage broker, to make sure this stuff is applicable to you and you can capitalize on it, because you have to qualify for these things. You have to make sure there's certain paperwork that's done, but this can save you thousands of dollars, especially for investors. Like if you're looking at deals like where, you know, you're doing like a tear down, or you're looking at a longer time horizon, you can really go in nowadays, because you're probably gonna go for like some sort of alternative financing anyways, where you're gonna pay like 7-8% interest rates. You can go to the seller and those people will be more than happy to accommodate some of that financing for you, right? So you can create deals by doing this. Or I would say just work with people that understand this stuff. A lot of the investor focused agents I know, they're already taking advantage of this, whether they're working with sellers and telling them, hey, you should offer this to a buyer, or if you're working with a buyer and letting the buyer know, hey, we could try to like attach this condition, let's negotiate a little bit. Let's try to find opportunities within this deal where we can, you know, target the financing aspect of it to make your life easier, to save you some money. Maybe we're not like saving only on costs up front where we're getting a deal. But a lot of cases right now, you can apply pressure and just get a discount on the price, but adding this into the mix where you're getting cheaper financing, it'll really help you, right? It'll save you a lot of money as a buyer. So just kind of look into this stuff. It might not always be beneficial. You have to look at the ROI, right? Like how much money are you really saving? Like if you're getting a rate buy down, or if someone's giving you a VTB, what are the terms? Are they charging you any money up front? Is there an actual like savings here? Or are you just doing all this work and negotiation back and forth and it's not amounting to much? So you can really save a lot of money here, but you got to make sure A, it is financially sound, and B, it's all done legally and the people involved, like your agent, lawyer, everyone understands this. So if you're looking in the Hamilton area or surrounding areas and you're looking at deals where you feel like there's an opportunity, or you know, you want to capitalize on these types of deals, then definitely reach out to me, because I'm actively looking for deals where they're offering incentives or where we can create that stuff, right? We can put these conditions in, and we're already exercising those strategies in this market to take advantage and get some really solid ROI just on the buy. So yeah, definitely reach out to me, and you know, I'll leave the Hamilton Investing Guide down below and my contact info as well.